Into the wild I'll go, and into the wild I am. It's been a while, freedom child, since I left my roots back home. Into the wild I'll go, and into the wild I am. It's been a while, freedom child, since I left my roots back home.
Welcome to the FREEBIRTH Society podcast. This is a radical space for women who are ready to celebrate their autonomous choices in birth, motherhood, and beyond. Together, we'll learn about wild birth through personal narrative, we'll explore the politics of birth, and we'll analyze everything that relates to our lives as women from a feminist perspective. Here's your host, Emily Saldea.
It's been a while, freedom child, since I left my roots back home.
Is birth work your calling? Do you long to witness and support the awesome power of women as we make life, form kinship, and transform the world through undisturbed, mother-centered birth? In your most expansive vision of your life, are you the authentic midwife of your community? Walking in total grace, reciprocity, and trust with women through the sacred portal of pregnancy and birth. Then our groundbreaking Radical Birth Keeper School is for you. It's an immersive and intensive, fast-paced live program in all things authentic midwifery and self-mastery that will give you the blueprint and guidance to launch a life-altering, world-shaking radical birth brand and business. Think birth business mastermind, life-changing coaching intensive, deep dive into all things birth, step-by-step roadmap for serving women authentically, and the wise woman initiation that you have been dreaming of, all rolled into one epic program that will change your entire life. It is time to become the lighthouse that guides women home to themselves. Head over to radicalbirthkeeperschool.com and grab your spot, because we are enrolling now and we always sell out. Say yes to your calling and join us in this revolution of bringing birth back home. www.radicalbirthkeeperschool.com. This week we have Roxane, a Radical Birth Keeper School graduate from Belgium who had her first baby via C-section after finding out her daughter was breech. Roxane suffered a horrible, life-threatening complication from the surgery 6 days postpartum and decided shortly after that there was no way she would ever go back to the hospital to birth again. Roxane stayed steadfast to her vision and birthed her second daughter in her own home, away from the harms of the hospital.
Welcome, my friend.
Thank you.
I'm excited to have you here. Take us to the beginning. Where does your mothering journey begin for you?
Yeah, I just want to start by saying that I'm so excited to be here, because this podcast has been a huge part of of my pregnancy and my journey. And I remember listening to the episodes when I was pregnant with my second daughter and thinking like, one day I'll tell my story here, and this is the day. So it's really exciting.
So cool.
Thank you so much. So my story starts in Qatar. We were living in Qatar with my husband. I met him there. We always knew that we wanted to have kids. He's from a family of 6 children, and I have 2 sisters, but we knew we wanted a big family and we wanted to start. So it was in 2018. I got pregnant after a few months of trying. I was really I was in the system. I wasn't questioning much. I was working as an airline pilot. And I thought that I would do just like my mom, who was an airline pilot as well. I would, have my kids and keep doing whatever I was doing, and just and actually becoming a mother changed my life completely. So I had the whole regular testing and everything. But I decided not to birth in Qatar because there they really, really like C-sections. And my due date was around Christmas. So we wanted to be like close to family and not stuck in Qatar with no one coming to see us.
Sure.
So I did my entire prenatal care in Belgium. So I was flying every month from Qatar to Belgium to meet with the midwives. I had decided to give birth in a birth center, like a birth house, which is separate from the hospital, which at the time felt already alternative to me. Like I thought that women who were having home birth with regulated midwives were a bit crazy. So the whole pregnancy was quite uneventful. In the first trimester, I was depressed. And I didn't dare to tell anyone because I felt ashamed. I was so happy to be pregnant. Why was I feeling these waves of darkness come over me? Why did I want to die? That was really hard. But it went away after 3 months. And then I was just feeling great, so happy to be pregnant. I kept flying for 3 months. So that's probably why I was also really tired and why I felt depressed. But I think it's also because I was starting to like come out and become a different person. And so a lot of things came up that I was not ready to deal with at the time. And then at the end of my pregnancy, I got a big stress thinking that I had my dates wrong and that I wouldn't be able to fly back home to give birth in Belgium because I was flying like at the last moment, like, I don't know, it's 35 weeks and some days. And I thought that I messed up and that I would be stuck there. And I remember that night feeling my baby move so much and like not sleeping at all because she was moving so much. And a few days later, I had an ultrasound to confirm that I was fit to fly. And there the OB said, "Oh, your baby's breech." I was like, "What?" Like my baby had down the whole pregnancy and suddenly she was breech. That was like, I was so upset and angry at my baby. And I started looking up everything to turn her around. I did like spinning baby stuff and I went on an ironing board with my head down and I put like all this crazy stupid stuff that they tell you to do because your baby is in the wrong position according to them. And then I flew back to Belgium because actually my dates were correct. And then I saw my midwife who was like, "You still have time because it was not allowed to birth a breech baby in the birth house." Yeah. So she said like oxytocin, just like cuddle up with your partner, be like, relaxed. And then I went to the OB there, which I had never met, which was a horrible woman. Like I always say that she was patriarchy in a woman's body, even worse than some male OBs. She said, "Oh, your baby will never turn. What are you like?" So I was devastated. And then when I started to talk about gentle C-sections, because the thing is, my baby had the cord around her neck twice. We could see that on the ultrasound apparently. So the doctor said that she would hang by her cord and that she would die.
What?
If
God,
I tried
they'll
to
just
go,
say anything.
yeah.
You can't tell sometimes if they're that fucking stupid that they just believe this stuff or if they're actively knowingly lying. Like
I think she was convinced. I think she was convinced that it was true. I think she's still convinced
so dumb.
that your baby will be hanging by the cord if he's born breech like that. So she said there was no way we could try to turn her around or everything, which I didn't want to do. I didn't want to do the external version. But until the end, I still believed that she would turn. So I still that's why I stayed with that OB. It was because I had my plan. My baby would turn at the first contractions. I would drive to the hospital, do an ultrasound, check that she was head down, and then just go and call the midwife and go to the birth center. But that didn't happen because she never turned. I at the end, I even did an acupuncture session to try to turn her, and I fainted. So then I decided that I would stop trying to put her in a position that she obviously didn't want to be in. And so, yeah, the end of the pregnancy, I cried a lot. I was really angry. I really didn't want that C-section. That was the opposite of what I wanted. And everyone was like, "Why are you so upset? It's just another way to birth. And at least your yoni won't be destroyed." Like that kind of comment where you're like, "Oh, yeah, thank you for that comment." So on the day, the only thing that I managed to negotiate with the horrible OB who laughed when I said that maybe I wanted in the C-section to try to push or, to do something a little bit more like a birth, which obviously is not a birth, like a vaginal birth. She said, "No, we're not going to do that. You can't do skin to skin with your baby. It's too cold in the in the operating room, you can't do this, you can't do that. She was just like really, really horrible. And I still stayed with her. And then she wanted to plan the C-section because my due date was 22nd of December. So she really didn't want to come for Christmas and stuff. So she really wanted to plan it on the 18th. And for that, I stood strong. And I'm so happy that I did, because I had read Michel Audin's book about like induction and everything, and that it's still better to have the baby choose their own birth time, which is obvious. So the contraction started, we went to the hospital. The C-section was just a C-section. I was not in my body, I was just like somewhere there. Yeah, it was yeah the first time that I met my daughter, my entire body was itching, which they didn't tell me was normal with the anesthetic product. So I was like, am I dying? Is this something wrong? I couldn't connect with her, she was on me, but everything was just itching. We managed to get out of the hospital as soon as possible. We really didn't want to stay there. And then we were home and it was good. And after 6 days, my mother, who was also a pilot in Qatar, came from Qatar to visit us and to meet our daughter, which we called Cassiopeia, which is like the stars, the constellation. And my mother cooked. I was on the couch and I had already called the midwife to tell her that something was weird with my scar, like there was a bulging. And she came that day to remove the sutures, and but I was lying down, so she said, no, nothing looks weird, it doesn't look like it's bulging, it looks okay. And I wasn't in pain. So and then she left, my mother came, she cooked dinner and she said, okay, let's eat. And I just stood up from the couch, which was like 1.5 meters far from the table. And then once I arrived at the table, I had this like piercing pain, which made me instantly start to cry. And I was like, whoa, this is so painful. Like, what's going on? And then I remember I looked at my mom and I said, it feels like it's opening, but it's not possible, right? And then I saw through I had a black skirt. I saw through my skirt that there was blood. So I opened to see, and like in front of my eyes, my scar opened, like really like a clothes that you would rip out the suturing, like it opened.
Oh,
and
it's not really a scar yet at 6 days.
Yes, well, yeah, the incision, yeah. So, and then my intestine came out like from the incision, and I just went on my knees and I let out a scream that we all remembered for months after that. And then I was there on all fours, like petrified. My mom came, she turned me around. She told me like, lie down, because obviously gravity was not really helping me in that case. But
you actually saw your intestines come out.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. My God, Roxane.
Yeah. It was good because I was wearing underwear and it kind of contained. I think it would have been, like, yeah, after that I was thinking if it happened in the shower, I would have been like, yeah. So then, well, the whole thing, like we called the ambulance. My mom was behind me. They came, they took me, and I was on the stretcher thing. At that point they gave me morphine, so it was easier to handle the pain. And then I remember my husband was there with my 6 days old baby in his arms. I said, you go to the next door organic shop, you buy this formula, but like this organic formula, but it's only for this afternoon because I'm breastfeeding her tonight already. Like it was clear for me that this was not gonna threaten our breastfeeding relationship. So I had a surgery, they put everything back in. The crazy thing is that the surgeon who operated me was a 8 months pregnant surgeon, and she got a C-section the next month, and then she was taken care of by the same midwife who took care of me, like crazy. And after that, obviously we were in survival mode for a few months. I didn't realize how crazy this whole thing was. Actually, when my mom came to see me in the hospital after I woke up from the anesthesia, she was like, okay, so the surgeon said that you're going to be really tired, so you can either sleep and then we will take care of the baby at home, or you can pump your milk and breastfeed, and we bring her to you and you can breastfeed her. I was like, bring her to me, like I want my baby, I want to breastfeed her. Like, and the first night I still thought that it was kind of funny. Like I was like, these things only happen to me, my life is always so like crazy, like, but usually in a good way. But I was like, only this thing can only happen to me. But then the next day I was like, why did it happen to me? I was feeling a lot of guilt because I thought that maybe I did too much. But it turns out from the surgeon that apparently it was not done properly. I mean, that's what she said. That's like, it really looked like, you know, if you're sewing something and you don't do a knot at the end, well, you know, it's going to open. So,
so
yeah,
that's all that really happened, was that literally the incision just reopened. So
yeah,
it wasn't closed properly.
yeah,
And that was it.
yeah.
Oh my God, that is so dangerous. Wow.
Yes, and probably it was the inside incision, because there are a few
Right.
that was done incorrectly, and that's why it was bulging.
Mm-hmm.
And then actually with the pressure, when we removed the thing from the outer incision, that's why it opened.
Ooh.
So yeah, so that was the beginning of my motherhood journey. But the good thing is that the breastfeeding went really well, and I bonded with my baby. Like, I think it's maybe this whole crazy thing helped me bond even more with my baby, like become even more protective.
Oh yeah, but it's like trauma bonding. It's
Yes.
not, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting, right? Like, thank God they didn't let you have a vaginal breech birth, right? Like, the logic of how, I mean, you could have died. Like, the logic to put you through surgery and then have a not uncommon complication that could have risked your life,
Yeah,
was on the rationalization that it was too dangerous for you to have a vaginal birth. It's just so nuts.
yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so at what point in your, now you are recovering, you've had 2 surgeries now, and at what point do you start to like question what went down? You know, like how does that first year leave you?
I was sure that my C-section was unnecessary. Like,
Okay.
already from like, I it was very deep down inside me. I knew that this C-section was unnecessary. I didn't have the proof yet. Like, so that's why I decided to become a doula at that point. I was still a pilot. I went back to flying after 6 months. It was really hard because like becoming a mother completely shifted the energy that I was in. I used to be in a very masculine energy. And so becoming a pilot was natural and easy. But then after having my daughter, going back to fly, I was like, what am I doing here? I'm pumping my milk in hotel rooms, and there's someone at home taking care of my, like, it didn't.
Yeah, it's so disjointed.
Yeah, it didn't feel right anymore. And I was not even interested in what I was doing. Like, before, I used to be interested in the technical stuff. But so I started this online doula training, and obviously it was to cure myself, like to debrief my own trauma. And I thought at that point that I would become a doula and that I would save women from what I've which I think is for a lot of doulas. So I started reading all the books and doing lots of online training and stuff to really understand what happened to me. And then a year later, we were back in Belgium. I quit the flying job. My husband as well, he found a job in Europe. And then I still thought that I would be a pilot and a doula. I didn't really know how that would work out. But then COVID happened, and I realized that I didn't want to fly anymore. And so I attended my first birth. It was a friend of mine from Qatar, who gave birth at my mom's house, because her parents were not for a home birth, and she lived there. So long story short,
This is before the school.
This is before the school.
Okay.
Yeah, this is before the school. And there was 2 regulated midwives for that birth, and the birth went very well. And it was, what I forgot to mention, I went to Michel Audin's seminar with my friend, actually, the one who was giving birth, a few weeks before her birth. And he really said that he was talking about VBACs, and his wife, who's a doula, radical birth keeper, said that women who were giving birth at home unassisted were the clever ones. She said that in front of 100 doulas and OBs and stuff. So already it started and then at that birth, everything went well. And at the end, the midwife said, "Oh, it's time for pushing now." And she tried to make my friend push, and it really didn't feel right with everything that I had learned, and especially Michel Audin, who is the one who coined the term fetal ejection reflex. And I was like, why does she have this coach pushing at home when everything seems fine? And then it wasn't working. Like, she was trying to push, but obviously you're not supposed to try to push, like, it's supposed to happen, and it wasn't working. And it started to eventually the baby was born at home, everything was fine, but it was strange.
Imagine if I came over to your house and I was like, I want you to poop right now. Start pooping. I want you to just start pooping right now. This is when I think you should poop right now.
Yeah.
Like, it would literally be impossible.
Yeah.
It's so
Yeah,
upsetting.
definitely.
It's like they can't help themselves.
No. And that's one of the most like open and like I mean radical, but not radical midwife that there is, home birth midwife that there is in our community. So I was really surprised. And then I remember when she left, because after that she came for obviously for a few postpartum visits, and I said, so do you, even then I wasn't really like understanding the full impact of like that kind of intervention. And I said, do you accompany women for VBACs at home? And she was like, no, we don't. Only if you've had a vaginal birth in a hospital in between, like your VBAC and then the third birth or whatever. So I was like, oh, wow. So this means that I can't birth at home for a second child with a regulated midwife. And then I realized that all the birth centers in Belgium are the same. You can't have a VBAC in a birth center, even one which is in the hospital. You can't have it. Like, so I was like, oh, but there's no way I'm going to hospital with everything that I know now. Like, there's no way. And I still remember I was in my room on my phone, and I still remember like I was following you. I was following FREEBIRTH Society. Yeah, and it clicked. I looked at one of your posts, and you started talking about the Radical Birth Keeper School, and I was like, this is it. This is the solution. If I want to birth at home, I'm gonna have a free birth. And then a couple of months later, I enrolled into the school. And that was like such a big revelation. And yeah, and also what I did just before that was, maybe you've heard about her. Her name is Quantic Mama. She's the one who took all of the teachings from Wapio and translated them into French and added her touch for the French-speaking world. And she also has a lot of trainings and stuff. And I did one of her seminars, and she talked a lot about VBAC and about the fact that she is confident that our uterus is clever and is not gonna like, overwork itself. And because obviously the talk is always about uterine rupture, and that's the fear that there is. And that's a fear that I had to work through, but through the school and then that seminar with her, like I started thinking, well, of course I'm gonna have a free birth after C-section.
And the logic there is like, so there's a tiny percent of the possibility that in a normal vaginal VBAC that your uterus would rupture, but there's 100% likelihood of surgery, which comes with all of those complications or potential complications if you just go in for a repeat C-section, like it just doesn't ever really add up in my brain. Yeah.
And I remember what really stuck with me was on that seminar, she mentioned that because she used to be a regulated midwife, and in her first years, there was a woman in the hospital that had uterine rupture, but it was not a VBAC. It was a first-time mother.
Totally.
And she had an epidural, and they went full on the oxytocin, like the synthetic oxytocin. And this is why her uterus ruptured. And I remember thinking like, wow, so it's not about this VBAC thing. It's just, what they do. Because we know the percentage of uterine rupture in a hospital setting, but we don't know it for a free birth, for a autonomous birth. So and I started feeling like there was a spirit baby that was talking to me at that point, that was trying to come, but I wanted it to be clear with my husband that this is what we were going to do. So it was summer, we were driving. We always have those hard conversations when we're driving. And I told him, so we want to have a second child, but I'm telling you already that this is what's going to happen. Our baby is going to be born at home with no medical assistance. And in the beginning, he was like, no. And I said, if you don't agree, you don't have to be there if you don't want to. I'll have someone there. But if it's okay, if you don't have to be there. But if it's not okay at all, then we won't have a second child. Like I'm so. And then he said, okay, you'll educate me on this. You'll give me the books and the tools, and I'll be ready for it. And so we went on this conscious conception journey, which was really amazing. And I did a vision board of like images, and I had my little altar, and we ate a lot of good foods. We had liver and like lots of nutrient-rich foods. And I remember on that little vision board, I put I love flowers, and I put a photo of a narcissus, like the yellow flower that comes in spring, because I love them and I plant them in my garden. And then when we started trying, it wasn't coming. I thought that because I was on this conception journey and I knew my cycle better and everything now, it would come like this.
Totally.
So I was really so confident that this time it would be so easy, but it didn't. And it took a few months, and that was, again, part of the journey. And then when I finally realized that I was probably pregnant, and I checked, like, I knew exactly when the baby was conceived, and I checked that my due date would be spring. I was like, well, I manifested that on my vision board. I mean, it couldn't have been different. This is how it was supposed to be. So I didn't do a pregnancy test, because after the complete guide to free birth, I was like, oh, that's a good idea. Let's try that, because I'm super curious. For my first daughter, I took lots of pregnancy tests way early that were negative because it was too early. So I was like, okay, let's see if I can do this. Let's see if I can trust the process completely and not do it. And I did it.
Respect.
And it was amazing. Yeah, well, and I obviously no judgment to anyone who does a pregnancy test. It's not invasive. It's not, but it's just, I wanted to see if it was like the first part of the journey for me. And the first trimester was absolute bliss. I don't have any morning sickness or any horrible symptoms. So I'm really lucky. And yeah, it was absolute bliss. I felt so happy. There was no medical interference, nothing. It was the end of summer, beginning of fall. And I attended a first birth as a radical birth keeper there, which was good. But then the end ended up with a transfer to the hospital for the placenta. So there was already something but it didn't scare me. I didn't feel like this would be something that would apply to me. And then the second trimester was really, really hard, because I attended a birth as a birth keeper where the baby died. And I had a call with you about this. And it was a VBAC 2, after 2 C-sections. And yeah, I felt so much guilt and so much everything. And yeah, that was a really dark time for me. I felt like I shut the connection with my baby at that point. I was like, I want to protect you from this. So I'm just shutting down this whole thing because it's too hard. I got really scared as well of the legal repercussions of this, because at one point the police took over the case and there was proof that I was there. But the parents are amazing, and they knew from the beginning that this was a possibility. So obviously there was nothing after that.
You also didn't do anything illegal, and
No.
you also didn't have anything to do with the baby dying.
Yeah.
Right? Both of those things are true, even
Yes.
though
Yeah. But there's such a witch hunt, so that there was the fear that, and then I started thinking, what if I go to jail? What, you have these stories in your mind of the worst case scenario and everything. But I remember coming back from that birth completely devastated. My husband asked me, one of the first questions that he asked was is this changing your plans, our plans? And I was like, no, it's not. Because it's not because it happened to that baby that it's going to happen to our baby. I knew from that point that I was still going in that direction. But it started a fear. I really made me think about death. I already thought about death before, because when you're on this journey, you know that you're not going to be able to hold someone else responsible if your baby dies while you're giving birth at home unassisted. Well, it's that it's a possibility and that there's no one else that's to blame for it. But I started fearing the whole thing around that. I knew that if our baby died, it was what we had decided. And we would see it as fate, and but I was really afraid of everything else, people's judgment and what we could risk. And I tried for the rest of my pregnancy to reassure myself on that, because there is a lawyer here in Belgium who specializes in that, but no one ever answered. I wanted to have a clear answer. I like black and white. And I wanted someone to tell me okay, maybe if you do one ultrasound, then if something happens, you will be safe. But obviously that doesn't happen. And this is where it was towards the end of my pregnancy that I realized that there would be no clear answer, and that I just had to focus on. It was after a call with Yolanda, where she said, what do you want to focus your energy on? Do you want to focus your energy on this possible scenario, or the beautiful birth that you're setting up for? And at that point I realized, okay, I can't control this, and whatever happens. But then and then the third trimester, I started fearing that my baby was breech, which was I knew that with a breech baby I would still give birth at home, because a breech VBAC is even worse than a normal VBAC. That it would be a definite C-section. That's what the midwife told me. And I started feeling like the bumps that I was feeling were the same as with my first daughter, who was breech. I was feeling like little kicks down my belly. And I had a dream that I had a boy who was breech and that I could like see him through my belly. It was so weird. And at that point, my husband told me, I was really, really late already in the pregnancy. I was like 30 weeks or 32 weeks. And my husband said, oh, I need a paper for work to have the paternity leave. It's like, you're saying, and it needs to be ready within a week. So I went to see the midwife that I saw for my first daughter. And I know that she's open and she had heard about my project and she had messaged me saying like, if you need anything, if you want to book an appointment, come. But I knew that she was going to try to give me her fears. So I initially I wasn't planning to go, but then I thought, well, I need this paper, so I'm going. And it's crazy that experience was crazy because I didn't want the Doppler. I didn't want to hear. I didn't need to hear my baby's heartbeat. I really didn't need it. And I told my husband before we entered, like, I don't want this. And this midwife is very gentle, like really not pushy at all. But it's this white coat effect, even when you're sure of what you want to do, even with someone who's not pushy. So she asked me if I wanted her to palpate my belly. And I was like, yeah, that's something that I don't mind. And then she asked me at the end, like, do you want the info? And I said, well, my baby's breech, right? And she said, yeah, I think so. And then she said, do you want to hear the heart? And I don't know why I said yes. I was like, so we heard the heart. I was like, okay. And then when we got out, I was like, what was this? It's so crazy the effect that it has. And so from that moment, I didn't know what to do. I was like, okay, if my baby's breech, is that like a normal position that my baby wants to be in? Or is there something wrong with my body that my baby cannot turn or be in another position? I was really in between the idea that there was nothing to do, that this would just be normal, and the idea that maybe there was something to do. Yeah, and that was hard. But then at around 36 weeks, I had this complete like breakdown. I was like, there's not enough time and I'm too scared and I don't know what to do. And then I booked a call with previous regulated midwife. Her name is Martina Gorner. It's a Confessions of a Midwife on Instagram. And I booked a call with her because every book that I found on breech was talking about what to do to reverse breech, but nothing was talking about the physiology of it. The only book that I found was a book by Ina May Gaskin, and it was so hands-on that I was like, oh, it's a spiritual midwifery. The part on breech, I was like, initially I gave it to my birth keeper, and then she said, no, I'm not interested in that, thank you. And I was like, yeah, thank you for saying this. Early in my pregnancy, I already knew who would be at the birth. My husband said that he would be there. And I have a friend who I knew we were totally aligned on this. It was amazing to have her support. And so after this call with this former midwife who turned like birth keeper, she really showed me lots of videos of breech and like the physiology of it and how babies come out. And it was amazing because it looks very different from a head down birth. I showed it to my husband like the week before a baby was born, and he's like, it looks like a frozen chicken is coming out of her vagina. After that it was like, because she said, why aren't you afraid of uterine rupture? Like you could completely put that fear away, which is good, but now you have this fear of breech. She said the only thing you have to do is do what you did with uterine rupture, you apply that to breech. And after that call, it was like all my fears melted away. I even thought that maybe I would be afraid if I didn't have a breech birth. And so yeah, the end of the pregnancy was good. I just let go all of this, and we were just enjoying time together with my husband who was there. My daughter, a few days before my like due date, not a due date, but the date that I calculated, I started having surges which were different. We were at my mom's, and I started thinking like, oh, this is different from the ones that I've been having for the past few weeks. And so we went home, and it didn't stop, and it just became more and more. We put up the pool. We put up a few different things that were not ready yet in the birth space, which was the living room. And then we went to bed, and the whole night I had like surges on and on. I didn't calculate or count anything. It's just every time I had a surge, I would go like in child's pose and breathe through it and then try to sleep again. So I didn't sleep well. And I had the same with my first daughter. Before going to the hospital, I had a full night of surge like this, and then it stopped for the day. So I had this expectation that it would stop and that I would have like a day's break, because there were still things that I wanted to do, stupid things like put twinkling lights in the birth pool, very important things. And then I stayed in bed really late because I wanted to be in the dark, but it kept coming and coming and coming, and then I had to accept that I wouldn't be putting those lights in the pool, and that I wouldn't do all those little details that were unimportant. And there was a friend of my daughter who was there the whole day, so they were playing in the pool while I was just in the living room. Like it's already in between worlds. It wasn't too painful. I just had to breathe through the contractions. My birth keeper already came just to see how I was doing, and I said, I'm still fine, you can go home. There's no point having you here like too early and just waiting. And then by the end of the afternoon, my daughter's friend was gone, and it started to become more real. We started timing just to have an idea, and it was coming like closer and closer and closer. I started crying. Like for no reason. Obviously there was a reason, but I was like just releasing, and I was crying. I was like, this is happening, a baby's coming, and crying. And then initially I didn't want to get in the pool too early because I didn't want it to stop things, but I felt that it was already getting intense. So we went in the pool, the three of us, my husband, my daughter, and I. And my daughter was full of energy. She was jumping from the side of the pool, and she was trying to talk to me during contractions. At one point, I was like,
how old is she at this point?
She was 3.5.
Oof.
Yeah. But I had briefed her. I told her like, you can give me water during contractions, and just like, and then at one point, I told her like, shut up. And then when the contraction was done, I'm sorry, but okay, when you see that I'm breathing, I'm doing this, you don't talk to me, okay? Okay. And then she started like giving me water with the straw and telling me, you're doing it, mommy, you're so strong. Like she was really cute. And then she got bored, and I don't remember what she did for the rest of the birth. Like she was there, but I can't tell you what she was doing. I was so in the zone in my own thing that I don't know what she was doing. And around like 2 hours later, I already felt that it was really intense. So I told my husband to call our birth keeper, and she came. And it was, around 7:30 in the evening. And from that point, I felt that like the whole birth was transition. It was just, I kept repeating that I couldn't do it, and that it was too hard, and that and then it was too painful, and like it was like a mantra that I was repeating like over and over, even though I never felt any fear. I always knew that I was okay and that it was okay, but I just kept saying it over and over. And I went between the pool, the toilet, where it was too intense, the dilation station, it was too intense, so I didn't like to stay there. So I would go back to the pool. I tried to lay down in the couch. I realized why women don't want to be on their backs. It was a nightmare to be on my back. And a few hours later, around 9, I was in the toilet, and my birth keeper said, okay, have you tried putting your fingers just just out of curiosity, and I said, I'm afraid that I will be disappointed. But then on the other hand, I have no idea what it's supposed to feel like. So I put my fingers, and I felt a little ball, little something. And I was completely already out of it, because we were sure that it was a boy. I don't know why we were sure. I had dreams and stuff. So I said, maybe it's one of his testicles. What the hell was I thinking? My waters.
At that stage, you have no idea.
Yes, you have no idea.
Yeah.
So I said, oh, maybe it's one of his testicles. My waters hadn't even broken. It was my water side, my amniotic side. But it was encouraging because it was there. I even asked my husband, I was like, can you feel how far it is and what it feels like? And he said, oh, it feels like it's quite close. We were still like, between the toilet and the pool. And then at around 10 o'clock, I just wanted a break. I remember that some women feel this phase where they can sleep, and the contractions stop. And I was like, when is this coming? This is what I want. I need this. I need it to stop. So my husband said, okay, let's go to our bed and just be there together. Our birth keeper was with our daughter. She read all the books of that we have in our house, while my daughter was in the pool. My daughter used the pool more than me. And then at that point on the bed, I told my husband, like, if I was in the hospital right now, I would be taking the epidural for sure. There is absolutely no doubt. And maybe I would even sign for a C-section. Like, I'm I am so done. This is too
Just
painful.
get it out.
Like, I can't do this. And then he was like, he really walked me through, like, you really want to like go in the car and go to the hospital, and you know what will happen to you. You did no prenatal care with them. They're gonna C-section you. Like, is this what you want? I was like, no, it's not. It's too painful. And then I got what I wanted. I got 20 minutes of respite, like contraction completely stopped. It stopped, and we both slept for 20 minutes. And after that, I tried going back to the pool, but it was too cold. My husband said, okay, because our daughter was still up, it was late. So he went to put her to bed. And then he said that he would go to bed as well, because it might still be hours, and that it would be good if one of them was had energy. So he went to bed. And then my birth keeper said, you're in the pool right now, but the pool is cold and it's just nothing is happening. I was just there because it was comfortable, like, because it was kind of slowing things down, but nothing was happening. And I felt that I should get out. So she said, okay, let's get you out. And we went to the toilet. I still had my comb. You know that some women use a comb for like a the thing that you use. And I read that it could help for contraction. So I hung to that thing for the whole birth. I don't know if it helped, I don't know, but and I was there in the toilet. And at one point I told them, just before my husband went to bed, I don't remember this, I was just wearing my robe, and I said, it's never gonna happen. And my husband, the whole time, he was funny, and he was always like, they always believed that it would be fine. And he said, you think that your baby is gonna stay in you forever? And I was like, yeah. And then I looked at him and I said, because you still believe that this is gonna happen? They were like, yes. And then on the toilet, I was like, my birth keeper was massaging my back, and apparently I was telling her, and still I don't remember this, all the things that should be happening. If this happens, we need to do that. And if this happens, like, but I wasn't really in my brain because I don't remember. And then I felt this first push, and I was like, oh, this is there. But I told her I want to be on all fours, but I didn't want to be on the cold floor of the toilet. So we went in the living room. I just had the time between two contractions to go on all fours, and then my waters broke like, and then like an explosion. That was so amazing. So I told her, go and wake him up, but he never slept. Within 30 minutes, my baby was out. It was so amazing to feel like I remember a friend telling me that it was like puking from your yoni, and it really felt like that. It was so uncontrollable, and it wasn't painful anymore. Like I would like be like scream, and then and at first they told me, we see something coming, but we still thought that the baby was breech. And then they said, we see hair, so it's either a head or it's a boy with hairy testicles already. So obviously it was a head. Came out. I really felt the ring of fire. I was like, it burns. I felt like I tore, but I didn't. And then after her head was born, the next contraction, she got out. I was on all four on the couch. My husband caught her. She had the cord wrapped twice around the neck. He just untangled her like completely naturally. My birth keeper said like he had done that his entire life. I turned. I was still like out there. He gave her to me between my legs, and I checked. And I was like, it's a girl. And he didn't even think to check. And we were like, oh, we already knew that we were gonna call our girl Penelope. So we just looked at each other and it was like, hello, Penelope, you're there. She cried instantly. And I cried as well. I couldn't believe that it was happening. I was so happy. Then I started shaking a little bit, which I knew could happen. I was in front of the fire. They gave me something warm to eat. We just cuddled in the blanket, and we wanted to wait for the placenta to be out to wake up my other daughter. We wanted to wake her up so she could meet her sister. But then the placenta wouldn't come out. So I tried leaning over a bowl. And my daughter, my second daughter, my baby, didn't want to breastfeed for like 20 minutes. She cried. She only calmed down once she was in my husband's arms. Then she calmed down, and she breastfed, but like really a little bit. And I didn't have any contractions, but I felt fine. There was no bleeding. I felt great. So after 2 hours, which was, like for regulated midwives, this is like the hard stop. But I was confident, and I tried to pull. I took my tincture, like I tried what I knew, but nothing happened. So we told my birth keeper, okay, just go to bed, go back home. We'll deal with this on our own. and we just went to bed, all of us, and we wanted to do a lotus birth. So I was still connected to my baby while my placenta was still in me. So we went to bed at like, so my daughter was born at 2 in the morning, and we went to bed at 5. And then we woke up at 7, and it was, I was trying to go to the toilet to push and to pull, and it was too complicated with the cord, which was short, and like my husband holding her, and we were not that attached to the lotus birth. Like we had everything in case we wanted to do it, but if we didn't, it was fine. So we decided to burn the cord at that point.
The placenta is still inside you.
Yes.
Damn.
Yeah. So we did that. And before going to bed, I sent a message to that midwife that I had a call with, because she told me that after that call, I could call her if anything happened. And just before going to bed, I messaged her like, I tried everything I know about getting this placenta out. I'm not particularly stressed, but I know as well that there's no reason that it should stay there.
Yeah.
Like I want it out. So, but when I woke up again, she said, it's fine. Don't worry. Like, try what you know, but don't stress, and don't go to the hospital if there's no reason, which I wasn't planning on doing. And then at around noon, so that was like 11 hours and 30 minutes after our daughter was born, I wanted to take a shower, and I just thought, this thing is going to get out. And I went to the toilet, and I pushed, and then I started peeing. And then this is where I realized actually that my bladder was full, and it was my full bladder. That was, and then I realized that during the whole birth, I only peed twice. Like I can only remember peeing twice. And then once I peed, the placenta got out. I had a bowl. We decided to freeze it.
Wait, you didn't pee postpartum?
No.
Crazy.
And but I didn't really think about it. Like, and it's burned. So but yeah, definitely if I had peed earlier, I know that the placenta, it was definitely detached. It was just hanging there.
What's funny about the placenta is, it seems like pretty much every story I've ever heard, including my own, once the mother is like, get out, like once she's at, and that can happen at 30 minutes, that could happen at 11 hours. But when the mother really is like, I'm done, on some deep level, that's often, when it happens. But that makes sense. And this is the bladder is always an interesting one, that when we don't have, like really experienced midwives with us, because a good midwife is going to think about your bladder a lot, right? That's like one of the things I'm thinking about the most at a birth. But it's so easy to not think about it when you're the birthing mother herself, and there's obviously so much going on, and you're only half back in your body, and it's just also you know how it is, it's just so wild for your own psyche postpartum. And so I find a lot of stories about bladders not being released either in the birth or postpartum, because it is kind of one of those funny things that it would be so nice if someone just had like mentioned it.
Yeah, definitely. I knew about it during birth, because my friend birth that I attended, the one with the midwife, couldn't pee, and so the midwife actually put catheter. And so that was something that I knew, and I remember the podcast episode about your friend who ended up having the whole crazy story with that. So I then after that I didn't really think about it anymore. And then
so it comes out on the toilet.
Yes, and I'm so happy that it's out. And it felt so great. I went in the shower, and then we just started, the rest of the story started. When my first daughter came, because after that we still woke her up in the night, even though the placenta wasn't out, and she was like crying, half happy, half I was so scared, but it was so beautiful, and and then the first 40 days I was high. I was really high. It was amazing. We had hired innate tradition practitioner, so I got like almost daily massages. We had a freezer full of amazing dishes. My husband did everything. I was just like a queen in the couch, just skin to skin with my baby the whole time. At the end, I really wanted to get up, and I really wanted to clean the kitchen. So like the end of the 40 days, it was long, but it was such a sacred time. So beautiful.
Wow. So the baby wasn't breech.
And baby wasn't breech. No, baby wasn't breech.
Funny.
I was almost disappointed.
I know, right? Well, you get all hyped up for it. Yeah, totally.
I was like, I'm gonna have a breech VBAC.
And how old is this baby now?
She's 7.5 months old.
And how has this VBAC outside the system birth changed you?
Wow, it's amazing. I had lots of expectations on how this birth would change me, and I was a bit afraid that those wouldn't come to be true, because it took me 2 years after my first daughter to get my energy back, to realize what I wanted to do. To like, I felt like depressed for so long, and now it's like this fire that's inside me has been like ignited with fuel. It's amazing. I'm just so much more confident in my mothering, and it brought us together as a couple. My husband is now the biggest advocate for for free birth. He's just he's amazing. We also discovered elimination communication with our daughter, which has been like also like the biggest trial of intuition that you can have. It's just now she's a little bit on a strike, so it was a bit disappointing, but for the first 6 months we caught like 95% of her pees. She didn't poo in a diaper for 6 months. It's incredible how wise our babies are. And this birth has completely changed me. It's amazing.
Love it. Yeah, your story is so important, because obviously so many women have primary C-sections, and there's just horrific stories everywhere you turn. And so women are at this crossroads where most of them will go back into the system that cut them open to begin with, and they will feel optionless, right? Because the system won't give them any options, or the options will be like, we can try for a vaginal birth, or I know lots of doctors in LA who will only do a VBAC if the mom's on an epidural. There's like rules, but those can feel like options. And, and then there's a small amount of women who just go no to all of that. And they are the brave women. They're the women who are, doing some really, really deep work to step that far out of what is acceptable in society and step that deep into our primal nature, right? And the gift that you give yourself, your body, your family, it just, how could it not color the rest of your life? Yeah, epic. Especially attending a birth where there was a loss, that rightfully so is going to throw anyone for a loop. It just sounds like I mean, I guess for all of us, but there were so many opportunities in your story to not stay steadfast and not stay clear, and you did, and you reaped the benefits of it because you did.
There were parts of my story where I was like, am I selfish? Am I just doing this for myself? And is it dangerous to my baby? Like, is it just something that I want, because this is what the outside world makes you think, that you're crazy. Like, why wouldn't you want the safety of the hospital and of everything that they can give to you?
Yeah, it was real safe for you last time.
Yeah, exactly. And this is why also I didn't mention my plan to many people. Like most people, I just kept them in the dark. My sister-in-law is a regulated midwife here in France, and she knew what I was going to do, and she respected me, so she never asked. And I really like that. And my mother-in-law at the end of the pregnancy, she was like, she knew as well, but she was like, so is there going to be a midwife? And I was like, yeah. I didn't want people to project their fears onto me, because I was going to do it anyway, and I was already dealing with my own fears.
Sure,
and
totally.
and this is what I tell most women. I'm like, for my first birth, like birthing in a birth center was already alternative to most people around me, and I tried to convince them, and then it really backfired. And then for this one, I was like, I'm not going to convince anyone, because my mother-in-law actually after that, she said, well, that's all and good, but you were just lucky.
Of course.
So you're not going to convince people, like, the ones who think that
it's like saying every time you don't choke on your food, you're just lucky.
Yeah.
Like a normal physiological event, right, is to chew your food and swallow it successfully, not choke. So every time you do that, it's like, you're just lucky that you didn't choke and die, because occasionally someone chokes and dies. It's just it's so backwards, and people are so disconnected. And, on the selfish tip, when you see mother baby as one, which obviously people in mainstream don't. But when you understand mother baby as one, to be selfish is to be for your baby. Like if you can't separate them, then to do what is right for you and to put yourself first is also to put your baby first, right? Like, because you can't parse it out. And
because I see so many women like thinking that it's selfish to birth at home, so they go to the hospital and then they end up with a postpartum depression, which is actually just trauma from what they and then they can't take care of their baby and
they don't understand.
It's just all related. Yeah,
beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
And that's it for today, my sisters. Check out everything we do, including one-on-one and group coaching, learn about our private membership, in-person retreats, and more on freebirthsociety.com. Our online courses are on freebirthsocietycourses.com, including our flagship course, The Complete Guide to Free Birth. Don't miss the Radical Birthkeeper School if you're ready to become the authentic midwife that women are searching for. Together we rise, and the revolution starts inside each of us. I'll leave you with our Free Birth Society theme song, Wild Woman by Aruba Red.
I honor you for the wisdom you held, the ancient traditions of plant medicine and womb magic. I feel the spirit of the ancestors as I place my hands upon my belly. This sacred portal will be honored. Eons upon light beams of survival, withstanding the eradication of our power by design. I will not allow the separation of our young to be forced upon me. My sisters will no longer birth in captivity. The picket line redefined from burning our wild women to paralyzing us and drugging our babes. Strapped down in a clinical white bed, drying up the milk from our breasts, keep your needles. My family will never again be doomed to chase those dragons or your poison. We reject your fear. We choose love. Everything with intention. Death, ascension. I will fly and bring her back from the stars. Conscious conception. Conscious conception. Wild